I served my country for over 3 decades, rising through the ranks of the military to become a colonel in Equatorial Guinea. I led men into battle, protected my nation, and faced enemies both seen and unseen. But the greatest betrayal I ever faced wasn't on the battlefield. It was in my own home. My name is Colin Mba, and this is the story of how my wife, Maria, and a man named Baltasar shattered everything I believed in. Baltasar wasn't just any man. He was a predator, a manipulator who thrived on seducing married women, recording their shame, and leaving destruction in his wake. Maria wasn't just my wife. She was the mother of my children, the woman I loved and trusted for 25 years. But when Baltasar came into our lives, everything changed. What I discovered shook me to my core. Not just betrayal, but the humiliation of knowing it had been captured and used as a trophy. This is the story of trust broken, lives ruined, and the lengths I had to go to protect my honor. It's a story of betrayal, consequences, and the haunting question of how people you love can become strangers. Let me take you back to where it all began. I dedicated my life to the military. From the moment I put on the uniform, I knew I was choosing a path of discipline, sacrifice, and service. For over 30 years, I served my country, Equatorial Guinea, with unwavering loyalty. I climbed the ranks, from a young officer fresh out of training to becoming a colonel, a rank that carried with it great responsibility and honor. My life was the military. I led men into battle, strategized to protect our sovereignty, and dealt with threats that often came in the shadows. Despite the dangers and demands of my career, I was proud of what I had built. Every promotion, every successful mission, and every decision I made was for the safety of my country and the future of my family. But in the midst of it all, there was one thing that brought me solace. One thing that gave me hope for a life beyond the battlefield. Maria. I met Maria in the mid-1990s. It was at a formal military event, one of those gatherings where uniforms gleamed, and every conversation seemed to carry weight. Maria wasn't a soldier, of course. She was a guest, accompanying her cousin, who was married to a high-ranking official. But she stood out. She had this elegance, this presence that caught my eye immediately. She was beautiful, yes, but it was more than that. She had this spark, a confidence that made her different from everyone else in the room. We talked that night, about life, about dreams, about the world. She told me she admired men with discipline and honor. I remember thinking that I had finally met someone who understood what it meant to stand for something. Maria was intelligent, full of life, and charming in a way that felt genuine. By the time the night ended, I knew I wanted her in my life. 2 years later, in 1998, I married her. It felt like the beginning of a perfect chapter. Maria was everything I thought I needed. A loyal partner who would stand by me no matter what. Together, we built a home, raised our children, and created a life that, on the surface, seemed unshakable. I worked hard to provide for her and our family. We lived comfortably. She had everything she could ever want: status, security, a loving husband, and a family that adored her. For a long time, everything seemed perfect. Maria was supportive of my career. She would attend official events by my side, smiling graciously and making everyone feel at ease. At home, she was a wonderful mother, ensuring that our children were well cared for while I was away on duty. I trusted her completely. I thought I was one of the lucky ones, a man who had found a partner as loyal and strong as he was. But looking back now, I realized there were cracks in the foundation of our marriage. Cracks I chose to ignore. From the beginning, Maria loved attention. She thrived on admiration, compliments, and the energy of being desired. At first, I didn't think much of it. She was beautiful and charming. It was natural for people to notice her. But as the years went by, I started to see how much she needed that attention. How it wasn't just admiration she enjoyed, but something deeper, something that began to overshadow our relationship. Maria had a way of surrounding herself with people, especially men, who flattered her. I told myself it was harmless, that she was just being friendly. She dismissed them as just friends, and I trusted her. But now, I realized that trust blinded me to the signs. Over the years, she became more independent, more secretive. She started going out more, dressing up for events I wasn't invited to, and spending hours on the phone with people I didn't know. When I was home, everything seemed fine. But when I left for military assignments, I now see how she lived a different life. I provided for her in every way I could: luxury, comfort, stability. But perhaps that wasn't enough for her. Maybe she wanted something more, something I couldn't give her because of my duties to the military. The warning signs were always there. I just didn't want to see them. For years, I dismissed the small things. The way she would light up when someone else complimented her, the way she seemed restless in our quiet moments, or how she would grow distant when I was deep in my work. I thought our bond was strong enough to weather any storm. I thought I had given her everything she needed to be happy. But I was wrong. As the years passed, Maria's love for attention grew into something I couldn't control. She craved excitement, something different from the steady life we had built together. And while I was busy serving my country, she started drifting away, not all at once, but little by little, until one day I realized the woman I had married wasn't the same person anymore. I wanted to believe that our marriage was still as strong as it had always been. I wanted to believe that the trust we had built over decades was unshakable. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. And as I would later discover, the truth was far worse than I could have ever imagined. I had heard of men like Baltasar before, smooth talkers, manipulators who thrived on the chaos they created in others' lives. But until he crossed paths with Maria, I never imagined someone like him could have any influence over my family, my life. Baltasar Engonga was infamous, a name whispered in private conversations among military officers, politicians, and anyone with something to lose. He was wealthy, charismatic, and dangerous, a predator who saw every woman as a conquest and every man as a potential victim. Baltasar wasn't just a regular playboy. No, he was far worse. His charm wasn't just in his looks or his money. It was in his ability to make women feel special, desired, as if they were the only ones in the world. But it was all a lie. He had a reputation for seducing the wives of influential men, military leaders, business tycoons, even politicians. He preyed on their vulnerabilities, their boredom, their desire for something new and exciting. And when he succeeded, he didn't stop there. His greatest weapon wasn't his charm. It was his camera. Baltasar had a habit of recording his affairs. Hundreds of videos, each one a trophy for him and a weapon against the women he seduced. Sometimes he used these videos for blackmail, demanding money or favors from his victims' husbands. Other times, he kept them as a twisted collection, a reminder of the lives he had ruined. It was said that Baltasar had been with over 200 women, most of them married, and each one of them left behind a trail of broken homes and shattered reputations. I had heard about him long before he came into my life. Stories of powerful men humiliated, their careers destroyed, their families torn apart because of Baltasar's games. I remember mocking those men in private, thinking, how could they allow their wives to be taken by someone like him? How could they not see it coming? I never imagined that one day I would become one of them. Baltasar crossed paths with Maria sometime around 2022. I don't know exactly how they met, but I can imagine how it happened. Maria was always drawn to attention, to excitement. She loved the thrill of being admired, and Baltasar was a master at providing that. He probably approached her with his usual charm, making her feel like she was the most beautiful, the most desirable woman he had ever met. And Maria, craving something different from the stability of our life together, fell for it. At first, I didn't notice anything unusual. Maria had always been social, always enjoyed going out and meeting people. But then she started changing. She became more secretive, spending more time on her phone, taking calls in private. She started dressing differently, more provocatively, as if she was trying to impress someone. And then, there were the late nights. She would tell me she was visiting a friend or a sick cousin. But something about her excuses didn't sit right with me. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was nothing, that Maria was just going through a phase. But the rumors started reaching me.
Friends, colleagues, even strangers would hint at her behavior, asking questions that made my stomach turn. And then one evening, I received an anonymous message on my phone. It said, "Colonel, watch your wife. She is meeting Baltasar Engonga in secret." At first, I refused to believe it. Baltasar? The man I had heard so many terrible stories about? No, not my Maria. She was the mother of my children, the woman who had stood by my side for 25 years. She would never betray me like that. But the soldier in me knew better. Instinct told me to investigate, to find out the truth for myself. I began watching her closely. I noticed the little things, the way she would smile at her phone, the way she would leave the room to take calls, the way she avoided my eyes when I asked her where she had been. And then came the night that confirmed everything. She told me she was visiting her cousin, but something about her tone felt off. So I followed her. She didn't go to her cousin's house. She went to a luxury hotel in Malabo. I waited outside, my heart pounding in my chest, trying to convince myself that there was some other explanation. But when I saw her walk out of that hotel 2 hours later, laughing and touching Baltasar's arm like a young girl in love, I knew the truth. Maria, my wife, had become just another one of Baltasar's conquests. I can't describe the feeling I had in that moment. It wasn't just anger or betrayal, it was humiliation. I had spent my life protecting my country, leading men into battle, earning the respect of my peers. And here I was, sitting in my car, watching my wife betray me with a man I had always considered beneath me. Baltasar had done what he always did. He found a weakness and exploited it. And Maria, for all her talk of loyalty and respect, had allowed him to do it. That night, I confronted her. When she came home, I asked her about her cousin. She lied to my face, telling me everything was fine. But when I showed her the evidence, her messages, the photos, even the video she had foolishly saved on her phone, she broke down. She cried, she begged, she said it was a mistake. But it wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. She chose Baltasar, she chose betrayal, and I chose to never forgive her. Baltasar didn't just seduce my wife. He destroyed the life I had built, the trust I had given, and the respect I had earned. He was a manipulator, a man who thrived on chaos and destruction. And for Maria, he was worth throwing everything away. Looking back, the signs were all there. I just didn't want to see them. For years, Maria had been growing more distant, more secretive, but I chalked it up to the natural changes that happen in any long marriage. I told myself everything was fine, that she was just busier, or perhaps feeling restless. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. It started with small things, things you wouldn't notice unless you were paying close attention. Late at night, when we were supposed to be relaxing together, Maria would be on her phone, texting or taking calls. She'd step out of the room, saying it was a friend or a relative. I didn't think much of it at first. She was a social person, always had been. But then she started smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years, not at me, but at her phone. I'd ask who she was talking to and she'd brush me off with vague answers. Then there were the outings. She began leaving the house more often, dressing up like she was going to a party or an important event. When I asked where she was going, she always had a reason: a visit to a sick cousin, a dinner with friends, errands that required hours of her time. But the timing felt strange, her explanations didn't add up, and when I tried to press her, she'd get defensive, accusing me of not trusting her. and for years I didn't press any further. I trusted her because that's what you do when you love someone. You trust them. But my instincts as a soldier started to kick in. I've spent my life reading people, knowing when something doesn't feel right. And Maria didn't feel right anymore. Her smiles felt forced, her excuses rehearsed, and there was a distance between us that I couldn't ignore. Then one night I received a message that shattered any illusions I had left. It was anonymous, sent to my phone with no explanation. "Colonel, watch your wife. She is meeting Baltasar in secret." My first reaction was disbelief. Maria? My Maria, the woman who had stood by my side for 25 years. How could she betray me like that? And with Baltasar of all people? I wanted to dismiss it, to tell myself it was just a cruel joke, but something in my gut told me to take it seriously. I started paying closer attention. I watched her more carefully, noting every little change in her behavior. The late-night calls became more frequent. Her outings became longer, her excuses thinner. She was careful, but not careful enough. And then came the night that confirmed everything. Maria told me she was going to visit her cousin, someone she hadn't mentioned in weeks. Her tone was casual, but something about the way she said it felt rehearsed, like she was trying too hard to sound normal. I decided to follow her. I waited until she left, then got into my car and drove behind her, keeping a safe distance so she wouldn't notice. She didn't go to her cousin's house. She went to a luxury hotel in Malabo. I parked a little way down the street and watched as she walked into the lobby, dressed like she was going to a romantic dinner. My heart was pounding in my chest, and every part of me wanted to storm in there, demand an explanation, and confront whoever she was meeting. But I held back. A soldier doesn't act on impulse. I needed proof. I waited in the car for hours, trying to keep my thoughts under control. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was overreacting, but deep down, I knew the truth. When she finally came out of the hotel, she wasn't alone. She was with Baltasar. They were laughing, standing close, and when she touched his arm, I felt like someone had driven a knife into my chest. I wanted to confront them right there. I wanted to walk up to Baltasar and put an end to him, but I didn't. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my hands ached, but I didn't move. A soldier doesn't let his emotions control him. I needed more than just what I saw. I needed undeniable proof. That night, Maria came home and acted as if nothing had happened. She sat on our bed scrolling through her phone, smiling like she hadn't just destroyed our life together. I stayed calm. I asked her how her cousin was, and she lied to my face, telling me everything was fine. When she left the room, she forgot to lock her phone. It was the moment I needed. I opened her messages, and there it was, the evidence I had been dreading. Texts from Baltasar, explicit photos, and even a short video of them together in the hotel room. My hands shook as I scrolled through it all. I could feel the blood rushing to my head, my vision blurring with rage. It wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation. She hadn't just cheated on me, she had done it with a man who thrived on humiliating men like me. When Maria came back into the room, I was standing there, holding her phone. She froze when she saw my face. She knew. I asked her calmly, "Tell me the truth, Maria." She tried to deny it, but when I showed her the messages and the video, she broke down. She cried, begged for forgiveness, swore it was a mistake. But it wasn't a mistake, it was a choice, a deliberate, conscious choice to betray me and everything we had built together. In that moment, I felt everything: anger, heartbreak, betrayal, and a deep, consuming sense of loss. This was the woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted with my life, and she had thrown it all away for a man like Baltasar. I gave her an hour to pack her things and leave. She cried, pleaded, tried to touch my arm, but I didn't respond. I couldn't. A soldier can forgive many things, but not betrayal in his own home. When Maria walked back into the room that night, she didn't realize her world was about to crumble. She saw me standing there, her phone in my hand, and froze. Her face went pale, and for a moment, It seemed like she was trying to decide whether to run or speak. I held her gaze, calm but cold, and asked her a single question. "Tell me the truth, Maria." At first, she denied everything. She stammered out excuses, tried to act confused, even pretended not to understand what I was talking about. She said I was imagining things, that I was being paranoid. But I didn't say a word. I simply held up her phone and played the video, a few seconds of her and Baltasar in that hotel room, laughing, touching, completely oblivious to the destruction they were causing. Maria's denial crumbled in an instant. She broke down, tears streaming down her face as she begged me to listen. She admitted to the affair but tried to downplay it, saying it was a mistake, a moment of weakness. She swore it didn't mean anything, that she still loved me, that she regretted everything. She fell to her knees, sobbing, clutching at my hand as if her tears could erase what she had done. But there are some things that tears can't fix. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lose my temper. I simply looked at her and said, "You have 1 hour to pack your things and leave this house." Her sobs grew louder as she pleaded with me to forgive her. She said she was sorry, that she would do anything to make it right. She told me she still wanted to be my wife, the mother of my children, the woman by my side. But all I could see was a stranger who had betrayed me in the worst way possible. I told her, a soldier may forgive an enemy, but never a traitor in his own home. Maria didn't understand. She kept asking why I couldn't give her another chance, why I couldn't find it in my heart to forgive her. She said she had made a mistake, that everyone deserves a second chance, but this wasn't just a mistake, it was a choice, a deliberate, calculated choice to betray me, to betray our family, our vows, everything we had built together. Forgiveness? Number. That wasn't an option. As I stood there, watching her cry, my mind raced through everything we had shared over the past 25 years, the good times, the struggles, the moments when I thought we were unbreakable. And then, like a cruel twist of fate, all those memories were tainted by her betrayal. Every smile, every touch, every promise she had ever made felt like a lie. Maria had thrown it all away for a man like Baltasar, a man who thrived on destroying families, who had no respect for honor, loyalty, or commitment. She hadn't just betrayed me, she had betrayed herself, our children, and everything we stood for. And for what? A few stolen moments of excitement? A man who saw her as nothing more than another conquest? I couldn't understand it, and I realized I never would. Loyalty and honor are not just words to me. They are the principles I have lived by my entire life. As a soldier, I was taught to value trust above all else. Without trust, there is no bond, no team, no family. And in marriage, trust is the foundation of everything. When that trust is broken, there is no going back. Maria had shattered that trust, and with it, she had shattered our life together. I told her, "You chose this path, Maria. You made your decision the moment you stepped into his bed. Now you must live with the consequences." She begged me to reconsider, to think about the family, to think about the years we had shared. But all I could think about was how easily she had betrayed me, how little she had valued the life we had built together. She packed her things while I sat in silence, staring at the walls of the home that no longer felt like home. When she left, I didn't look back. I didn't say goodbye. A soldier does not look back at a battlefield once the fight is over. And for me, this was a battle I had lost, not because I wasn't strong enough, but because I had trusted someone who didn't deserve it. That night, as I sat alone in the quiet, I reflected on everything that had happened. Betrayal is a wound that cuts deeper than any knife, and the scars it leaves never truly heal. Maria had not just betrayed me as a husband, she had betrayed the principles I had built my life on. Loyalty, honor, trust, these were not just ideals to me. They were the very fabric of who I was, and she had torn them apart. I realized then that some wounds are too deep to forgive. Some betrayals are too great to forget. Maria had made her choice, and I had made mine. She was no longer my wife, no longer the woman I had loved and trusted for so many years. To me, she was just another reminder that even those closest to you can turn into strangers when faced with temptation. As I closed the door behind her that night, I felt a sense of finality. The life I had known was over, but I still had my principles, my honor, and my dignity, and those I would never let anyone take from me again. The day I heard Baltasar had been arrested, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, a cold, quiet satisfaction. Justice, I thought, was finally catching up to him. This man, who had thrived on humiliating others, who had seduced countless wives and left destruction in his wake, was finally behind bars. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to believe that perhaps the world was balancing the scales. Baltasar's arrest wasn't a surprise to me. A man like him doesn't just make enemies, he collects them. Over the years, he had seduced the wives of powerful men, military officers, businessmen, and politicians, and flaunted his conquests as if he were untouchable. He had blackmailed some, destroyed others, and walked away each time without a care. But no one is untouchable forever, not even Baltasar. When I first heard the news, I imagined him sitting in a cell, stripped of his charm, his wealth, his arrogance. I pictured him finally facing the consequences of his actions, realizing that he couldn't manipulate his way out this time. But that satisfaction was short-lived. In Equatorial Guinea, justice is rarely simple, and power moves in the shadows. A man like Baltasar, with his wealth and connections, wasn't going to stay locked up for long. Within days, he was released. Just like that, he was back on the streets, walking free, as if nothing had happened. When I heard the news, the anger inside me burned hotter than ever. After everything he had done, after all the lives he had destroyed, how could he escape justice so easily? But I wasn't naive. I knew the truth. Baltasar wasn't just wealthy, he was connected. He had friends in high places, people who owed him favors or feared the secrets he held. You see, Baltasar's greatest weapon wasn't his charm or his money, it was his knowledge. He had collected dirt on everyone he came across, politicians, military officers, businessmen. Anyone who had something to lose was a potential target. And he had leverage. Those videos he recorded, they weren't just trophies, they were weapons. He used them to protect himself, to ensure that even when he was caught, there was always someone powerful enough to get him out. But Baltasar made a mistake. He underestimated the very men he thought he controlled. He thought he could humiliate powerful people and walk away without consequences. What he didn't realize was that those same men, those same enemies he had made over the years, were waiting for their chance. And once he was released, that chance came. After his release, things began to change for Baltasar. Slowly, quietly, the doors that had always opened for him started to close. His business partners abandoned him. His name became poison in the very circles where he had once thrived. People who had once been loyal to him turned their backs, fearful of the damage he could still cause. And the enemies he had made, men far more dangerous than he ever imagined, began to move against him. Baltasar thought he was untouchable, but in a place like Equatorial Guinea, no one is truly safe. Men like him, men who thrive on manipulation and destruction, always meet their fate, one way or another. It didn't happen overnight. It was a slow, calculated process. His influence disappeared. His connections abandoned him. And then, one day, he was gone. To this day, no one knows exactly what happened to Baltasar. Some say he fled the country, seeking refuge in France under the guise of needing medical treatment for his child. Others whisper darker stories, that he was dealt with in a more permanent way, that his enemies had finally caught up with him and silenced him for good. I don't know which version is true, and honestly, I don't care. What I do know is that Baltasar's life of manipulation and destruction came to an end. Whether he is hiding in exile, living in fear of the past catching up to him, or whether he has already met his fate, it doesn't matter to me. The man who thought he could humiliate and destroy families without consequence is no longer a part of our world, and that is enough. His downfall wasn't just about revenge. It was a reminder that no one, no matter how powerful or connected can escape the consequences of their actions forever. Baltasar believed he was invincible, but he was wrong. Men like him always fall, and when they do, it is a fall they can never recover from. I don't need to know the details of what happened to him. Whether he's alive or dead, free or imprisoned by his own paranoia, his story is over. The power, the charm, the arrogance that once defined him are gone, and in the end, that's all that matters. Baltasar Engonga is no more than a ghost now, a cautionary tale of what happens to those who live by destroying others. For me, his fate was never about vengeance, it was about justice. And while the world may not always deliver justice in the way we expect, it has a way of catching up with people like Baltasar. And that, for me, is enough. After Maria walked out of the house that night, I thought the worst was behind me. I thought I could move on, that cutting her out of my life would be the end of it. But I underestimated her desperation. She didn't just leave quietly. She fought to come back into my life, to undo what couldn't be undone. At first, it was messages, apologies sent at all hours of the day, each one filled with promises and pleas. She wrote that she had made a terrible mistake, that she still loved me, that she was willing to do anything to fix what she had broken. She begged me to meet with her, to talk, to give her a chance to explain. But I ignored every message. I had nothing left to say to her. When the messages didn't work, she started calling. At first, I let the phone ring, refusing to answer. But the calls didn't stop. She left voicemail after voicemail, her voice trembling with tears as she begged me to take her back. She said she couldn't imagine life without me, that she couldn't bear the thought of losing the family we had built together. But I didn't respond. To me, her words were empty. They couldn't erase what she had done. Then one evening, she came to the house. It was raining, a heavy downpour that soaked her through as she stood outside, calling my name. She didn't care about the rain, she just stood there, pleading with me to let her in. "Please, Colin," she cried, "don't throw everything away. I was foolish, I was weak, but I love you. Let me come home." I stood at the window, watching her. For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity. This was the woman I had loved for 25 years, the mother of my children. But that flicker quickly faded when I remembered what she had done. I remembered the lies, the betrayal, the humiliation she had brought into my life. And with that, any trace of pity was gone. I opened the door just enough to step outside. I stood in the rain, looking at her, and I said, "You threw everything away the moment you chose him. There is no coming back from that." Then I turned and went back inside, closing the door behind me. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Maria eventually stopped trying. The messages became less frequent, the calls stopped, and she didn't come back to the house again. I think she finally realized that there was no forgiveness to be found here. Not for something like this. In the months that followed, I had to rebuild my life, not just the routines of everyday living, but my sense of self. Maria's betrayal had shaken me to my core. It wasn't just about losing her, it was about questioning everything I thought I knew about trust, loyalty, and the people closest to me. But as painful as it was, I refused to let it destroy me. I leaned on the principles that had guided me throughout my life. Honor, self-respect, and dignity. Those were the values that had carried me through my military career, and they were the values that would carry me through this. I reminded myself that I was still the man I had always been, a man of discipline, a man of integrity. Maria's choices didn't define me. My response to them did. I poured my energy into my children, my work, and myself. I started focusing on the things that mattered, the things that were still within my control. I rediscovered my sense of purpose, and slowly the pain began to fade. It didn't disappear entirely, it never does, but it became a part of me, a scar that reminded me of the lessons I had learned. To anyone who has faced betrayal, here's what I can say. Trust is a gift, not something to be given lightly. Guard it carefully, because once it's broken, it can never truly be repaired. And never let someone else's betrayal define your worth. Maria's actions said more about her character than mine, and I refused to let her choices destroy the man I had worked so hard to become. There is strength in walking away. There is dignity in knowing when to let go, even when it's painful. I could have stayed, tried to rebuild, tried to forgive. But I knew that staying would have meant losing myself. And no relationship, no matter how long it has lasted, is worth sacrificing your honor or your peace of mind. Betrayal is a wound that takes time to heal, but it's also a lesson. It teaches you who you can trust, and more importantly, who you can't. It reminds you to value the people who stand by you and to let go of those who don't. And it shows you the importance of self-respect, because without it, you have nothing. Maria's betrayal was the hardest thing I've ever had to endure. But in the end, it didn't break me. It made me stronger. It reminded me of who I am and what I stand for. And for that, I am grateful. To those listening, remember this. Your dignity, your honor, your self-respect, these are the things that define you. Hold on to them no matter what. Because at the end of the day, those are the things that no one can take away from you. Loyalty is the foundation of any relationship. It is the bond that holds people together through life's challenges, the trust that allows us to open our hearts to another. But betrayal, it leaves scars that never truly heal. For me, Colin Ember, the greatest battle of my life wasn't fought on the battlefield. It wasn't against an enemy of my country. It was in my own home, against the betrayal of the person I trusted most. In that battle, I made a choice. I chose to walk away to protect my honor, my dignity, and my peace of mind. Because sometimes letting go isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. It's a declaration that you value yourself too much to stay in a place where trust has been shattered. But my story is not just about betrayal, it's about resilience, about standing firm in the face of heartbreak and finding a way to move forward. It's a reminder that no matter how painful life's trials may be, they do not define us. It's how we respond to them that truly matters. Now I turn this question to you. What would you have done in my place? Do you believe in second chances, or is betrayal unforgivable? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found my story thought-provoking, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to True Crime Cases HQ. We bring you stories that reveal the complexity of human nature and the lessons we can learn from them. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.